Emisión.net.
Hello again and welcome to Letter from England, broadcasting for AC Press. This week we're looking at an influence in Spanish society which just will not lie down. And that's the influence of Roman Catholicism. Not necessarily an influence of faith, not even perhaps always an influence of the church, but an inherent religiosity with a Catholic veneer, and which has been influenced throughout or through generations by Roman Catholic teaching, which is almost, one could say, endemic in Spanish society. Two interesting news items this week relate to this. The first, our top story in the news bulletin this week: who wants to talk to the Pope anyway? As an ardent Protestant, I have to confess the anomaly of the international status of the Vatican has long riled with me. The fact that we give democratic modern countries, that is, give the papal nuncio ambassadorial status and so on, seems to be a complete anachronism. But perhaps that's where the real power is, at least in Spain. I'll explain. In a show of papal, I hesitate to call it arrogance, but certainly papal power redolent of medieval times, Benedict XVI refused to see the Spanish foreign minister, Miguel Ángel Moratinos, on a recent visit, despite a direct request for one. The Pope's head of diplomatic affairs explained that the pontiff only meets ministers in very special cases. Well, despite this rebuff, Moratinos was reported to be very satisfied with his visit to the Vatican, presumably because he was allowed to talk to a cardinal, Angelo Sodano to be precise. Now, Sodano is the Secretary of State for the Vatican, one more anomaly in a situation which, as I've said before, really ought to be ignored, I think, by the international community, or at least changed. Well, a Spanish government spokesman commented, "We requested an audience as a matter of courtesy, but the Vatican told us this is not the habit of this Pope to meet foreign ministers except in very special cases." Well, that hides more than it reveals. First of all, has this Pope been there long enough to have acquired habits regarding the non-meeting of ministers, in normal circumstances at least? And also the other issue is, surely the Spanish government knew that beforehand. I mean, if they hadn't known that the Pope didn't meet ministers, well, that would be very surprising. And if they did know, surely they wouldn't have asked for the meeting anyway. Well, I think there's a subplot here. The fact remains that the Pope has not met a single representative of the Spanish government since coming to power 9 months ago. Deputy Prime Minister de la Vega also had to make do with Sodano at a meeting last November, and yet the Pope did meet the leader of the opposition, Mariano Rajoy, the leader of the Popular Party here in Spain. Not only Rajoy, also his wife, plus the Secretary for International Relations in the Popular Party, and the General Secretary of the party in Catalonia, Jorge Fernández. Well, with due respect to those personalities, was that meeting a very special case? And if that weren't enough to infuriate the Spanish government, the visit followed one by ex-Popular Party leader, and of course ex-Prime Minister as well, José María Aznar. So, the Pope seems to be a little bit selective in who he meets. The truth is that some ministers are more equal than others, even ex-ones. Mind you, a government with the ethics track record of the current socialist regime in Madrid is hardly flavour of the month in the corridors of the Vatican, and one can understand that the pontiff is trying to make a point with the socialist government in Madrid. Well, whatever your views on the status of the Vatican and its international relations, the inherent Catholicism I mentioned at the start in Spanish society also reared its head in a case in the city of Valladolid recently. 4 parents of pupils at a state school there have protested about the presence of crucifixes in the classrooms. They've called for the Catholic symbols to be removed on the grounds, and I quote, that they go against freedom of conscience and are discriminatory. And they accuse the school of denying their children their basic rights, which they say should be respected. Well, the matter went to the school governors, and that board decided otherwise. And unless the education authority steps in, which doesn't look likely, the matter could go to court. Well, what is going on here? Democracy has brought a photo of the king and a Spanish flag to state schools, and yet it has not brought the removal of crucifixes. New schools are not provided with crosses, but older ones, such as the one in Valladolid, in this case, still have them above their blackboards. Are crucifixes part of school furniture? And have they got anything to do with the running of the school or its educational function? Well, it says something, doesn't it, for the inherent power of Catholicism, even in the recesses of relatively secular minds, that the Education Ministry washes its hands of the matter and says that every region must decide for itself. The symbols bring the organisational autonomy of a school into question and make one wonder about the forces that govern it. And those forces vary from region to region. In 2002, a court in Madrid decided that it was a matter not for the school governors, but for the education authorities. Meanwhile, in the northern region of Aragon, they decided to remove the symbols. Valladolid, however, is in Old Castile, or Castilla la Vieja, and in this case the authorities have decided that the decision must be made by the school's governors. Fernando Sanchez Pascual, head of school inspectors, in a masterly pronouncement which manages to be both supremely political and at the same time say nothing, comments, "We respect the pedagogical autonomy of schools." Bravo. Well, perhaps the case of Andalusia, heartland of traditional Spanish Catholicism in the south, sums up the inherent contradictions best. The ombudsman, José Chamizo, himself a Catholic priest, on receiving just one complaint about them, recommended that the crucifixes be removed. Spain is different indeed. Well, thank you for listening again to Letter from England, about Spain, of course, broadcasting for AC Press under the auspices of the Spanish Evangelical Alliance. You can listen to us each week at emission.net or through the website protestantedigital.com. Goodbye for now.
Emisión.net